I am heated about this. Once again, I find myself in the position of completely being lost and confused because another cybersecurity person has come out and said, you should care about privacy because, and then they use an example of either illegal or indecent behavior. Someone, I won't say who, but another cybersecurity YouTube person, was talking about why you should care about privacy. And you've heard me before in my previous videos say, if you don't care, no one cares. So you have to care. And so some people consider it my job. I don't consider it my job, but the job of people like me to convince you to care. And this person came out, and they've done this before. They came out and they said, well, what if you're having an extramarital affair? Now, that's not illegal, of course, but to me, I think it's harmful to our overall argument, to our overall point, which is it makes us look bad. If I say you should care about privacy because what if one day you want to learn how to make a bomb, or what if one day you want to cheat on your spouse, to me, those aren't convincing. Those aren't convincing reasons to care about privacy unless you are someone who has either illegal or indecent behavior in mind, which I don't. So anyway, I wanted to make a video that was just quick. I recorded it recently and it was 40 minutes, so I just trashed that, and then I'm going to try to do this a little bit faster. But I wanted to make a video that just goes over some reasons, and these are not all the reasons, but these are reasons that I would like to hear people talk about more for non-illegal, non-indecent reasons to care about privacy. Again, in my other video, I talked about privacy and I was like, kind of nonchalant about it. But because I keep hearing people come out with these excuses to care about privacy or reasons rather to care about privacy that to me are just not acceptable by any stretch, I just feel like I had to make a video on it. So I'm going to go through, again, I wrote these down really quickly. So these aren't all the reasons, these are just some. So some good reasons to care about privacy. 1, what if you want to empower yourself to help others learn about cybersecurity, or to just help your local government or community in a way that your bloated government, a bloated federal government can't? So the reason why I bring this up is this is an example from my real life where I lived in a town. I grew up in a town that was very small, had like 1,000 people, one red light. We didn't get a grocery store until after I moved away. Very tiny. And so perhaps unsurprisingly, our local government was very, not well funded, and our local police was our police force was very poor. However, it turned out that there was illegal activity happening in surrounding areas that was kind of creeping into our neighborhood, and the police didn't know how to deal with it. And it was all drug related, trafficking related, etc. And so I had the idea to go to my police force and say, hey, what if I were to do like a once over, catch you guys up? I don't know if this will help. I don't know if it won't. But what if I were to give you a primer on cybercrime, on things that happen online, what potentially can happen, secure communication channels, stuff like that, just so you might be more familiar with what you're seeing. Now, that didn't go anywhere, and my faith in the local governments has eroded some since I made that claim, or I made that offer. But to prepare for that, because it looked like it was going to go somewhere, I did a lot of, I guess you can call it research into things that look illegal. Now, I brought up this article about Tor because during the Snowden revelations, after the Snowden revelations, we found out that if you accessed Tor or used Tor or downloaded Tor or Tails, you were considered an extremist and put on an NSA list. Now, of course, to prepare for that cybercrime talk, that's some of the stuff I looked at, downloading Tor, etc. And of course, you can tell by the story, there was no illegal intent meant. No issue whatsoever that would have raised an alarm if one of these people who was in charge of this, getting people on a list had known me. It never would have happened. But because the way they have to collect data in a way that basically just, you just become a map of a person, a blueprint of a person, and they have to put you in categories based on what they think. And so what that means is they overextend their surveillance, which we've learned a number of times is what they're doing. And they therefore miscategorize, which is interesting because it's harmful to them to miscategorize people. It's actually harmful to their data to miscategorize people. So what if also you wanted to contribute to a project that was legally circumventing censorship? So in America, I've talked about this in the last video I did, there's something that's being seen as censorship, but it's not maybe legally censorship, which is private companies suppressing news stories that don't fall in line with what they would like to be true. And because it's not a government doing it, it's a private company doing it, there's no legal question there. So if I were to circumvent their censorship or their news suppression, either by creating my own platform or by trying to manipulate theirs, that wouldn't be a legal question at all. It would just be me trying to get information that they're just suppressing into a more mainstream light. But contributing to a project like that looks at a high level like you might be contributing to some government censorship circumvention, right? Which could also get you put on the list. So that first point, as a kind of high level concept, and so it's probably not the best good reason, but like I said, I wrote these down quickly, and to me, this is a good reason, which is, again, I'll repeat it. Good reason to care about privacy is that you can empower yourself to help others in a way that your government probably can't. But if you don't take the proper steps, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be associated with people who are extremists, as you can see here. So anyway, first point. Second point, remove the potential to be targeted based on your interests. This is kind of an extension of the last point. So one of the other things that Snowden revealed is that if you accessed Linux Journal, of course I'm accessing it here now to to access this article, that you would be considered an extremist because it was considered an extremist forum. Now at the time, if I had known, obviously this came out in 2014 and I accessed Linux Journal before 2014, but if I had known, if someone had said, hey, accessing this will get you on a list, I can't promise I wouldn't have, but it obviously would have seemed less likely. Clearly, that would have seemed less likely because it's true. The people, Linus and Stallman and Fox and the other people who were heavily involved with the GNU tools and Linux itself, they were political people. But the guy who made Hannah Montana Linux isn't a political person. They're just trying to have a bit of fun, and there's all the reason in the world for them to access Linux Journal. Again, miscategorizing is harmful to a group like the NSA. If the guy who made Hannah Montana Linux is on their extremist list and he's getting further attention, that's attention that's being wasted in a place where it should be targeted. Now, you could just circumvent the possibility of getting on one of these lists by taking certain precautions, caring about your privacy, etc. And again, Linux Journal is just one example. I'm talking about across the board. Remove the potential to be targeted based on your interests, even if your interest is baking. You could access a site like Linux Journal that is about baking, that it comes out later for some reason. Maybe it happened that, a good example is 8chan. I'm not saying that 8chan, I've talked about 8chan in my past 2 videos actually, because it's an interesting case study. So 8chan has special attention from the government all the time. Because if you don't know, for those of you who aren't Americans, every now and again we have a mass shooting here. And 8chan has been used 3 times in the past, I think, 2 years to upload manifestos from people who were partaking in mass shootings, the mass shooters themselves. So it has special attention from the government. It's seen as a place where this stuff can kind of breed and I guess propagate. But there are boards on 8chan that are for like Christianity. And all it is wholesome talk about people who are, by people and for people who are interested in learning more about Christianity. So you could get onto a baking forum, and it could turn out 6 years from now, someone used it for some nefarious purpose, and all of a sudden, all the information you didn't protect while you were on there is now put in your file, and you're labeled an extremist. Anyway, that was the second reason. Remove the potential to be targeted based on your interests. Again, assuming your interests are legal. This is all about legal. This isn't about indecent. This isn't about, watching pornography or doing anything illegal online, looking up bomb making or anything. This is none of that. These are just reasons to care, even if you aren't interested in anything indecent or illegal. So third, keep information about you and those you love private from non-government third parties. And I say non-government because, again, I don't want to bring legal into it. So keeping information about you and those you love private from non-government third parties. So this here is an article that's an interview with a gentleman named, I won't say his name, I guess. You can see it in the article, but it just feels weird saying it because his story's so old. Anyway, this gentleman, his daughter and her boyfriend were killed in a car accident. A very sad, it's a tragic story, absolutely tragic. And this gentleman received a piece of Office Max advertising that said, let me see if I can find it. Yes, it was addressed to his name, comma, daughter killed in car crash. So someone somewhere, whether it was his social media account, whether it was emails, someone was collecting data on him and selling it to advertisers, even at the level of his 17-year-old daughter was killed in a car accident, and he was being targeted based on that category alone. Office Max was trying to sell him reams of paper explicitly because his daughter had died recently in a car accident. Now, forget the fact that there's no reason that these people should have this information about you. Think about the fact that in this story, you can read the article. I'll put a link in the description to it. The mom was traumatized by this. It completely changed the way she viewed the internet, which is, in that part, might be good. If you have to find some silver lining, that might be a good thing. But it was re-victimization. She had to relive this trauma, knowing that now, forever, by the way, forever, her and her husband are going to be categorized as our daughter was killed in a car accident. Every experience they have, all the ads they see, all the ads they're sent in the mail will be based on, at least partly, the fact that their daughter was killed in a car accident. Totally traumatizing. How about this one? Target. So one thing Target does is it takes the intersection of things you buy and tries to give you scores for certain life events. In this case, the story here is there were 25 products that, when analyzed together, allowed Target to assign a shopper a pregnancy prediction score. And it gave a pregnancy prediction score to a minor, a 17-year-old, and sent her an advertisement. Now, interestingly, that was the first the parents had heard that the daughter might be pregnant. And they found out she was pregnant because Target sent an ad to their home with prenatal stuff. It was all this baby-related stuff. So this is Target disrupting this family's life because they want to sell them more product. They need to make another billion. So they're going to completely inject themselves into this person's home life. And again, Target, these companies, these faceless organizations, they're malicious. They're hydras. I mean, they're absolutely evil things. If I can use evil there, perhaps that's not the correct adjective. But you have to protect yourself. And I'm not trying to victim blame these people. It's not this poor girl's fault. She's a minor who was targeted by Target, oddly enough, called Target, no pun intended. She's a victim. She's a victim of Target. She's a victim of advertising. And that might sound extreme. You might laugh at that. You might think like, oh, victim of advertising. But seriously, think about this. I mean, this is the level that they're thinking. They're not thinking about like, okay, they live in an upper class, rich neighborhood. Let's try to up the price in our ads for them as opposed to someone in a poor neighborhood. That, in a way, makes sense because you want to get people out of the house to buy your stuff. This is at the level of we want to predict when and how someone will get pregnant before they get pregnant, and then advertise, not prevent teen pregnancy, advertise to them based on the fact we have given them a pregnancy prediction score, and we hope they get pregnant soon because we can sell them more stuff if they get pregnant as opposed to if we prevent the teen pregnancy. Again, this was a minor. Anyway, so keep information about you and those you love private from third parties, not even governments, just Target and Office Max, who are here very willing to sell you stuff based on whether or not a family member dies, whether or not a family member is going to get pregnant. And like I said, I'll post a link to this too. There's actually a funny line in here. It's not funny. It's a terrible story, but the dad was like, yeah, I didn't know that was happening in my household. It turns out she's due in 7 months. So Target revealed to us that there was lewd activity in our house. Next point. My next point, I wrote some of these down, like I said, and this one's actually just kind of a branch of this point. I wanted to reiterate that these aren't your parents. They're your retailers. These are retailers who are doing this. Anyway, next point. You may own a machine that can be used to incriminate you even if you've done nothing incriminating. And by machine, I mean, of course, almost anything. But look at this example. So Strava released data. Strava is a company that I think it's like a data collection company for things like Fitbit. It does like, if you jog, it gives you like here's where you jogged and how long it took and all that stuff. So they released a heat map of all the data they had. And of course, they released unknowingly information about secret government military organizations. So what this is here on the left, the gray picture with a red outline, That is where soldiers wearing Fitbits or Fitbit-like devices were jogging around the base because they have to get up and exercise. This is something they have to do. They have to do 1,000 push-ups, run 6 miles. And so they could easily identify secret government bases that were not supposed to be known by looking at these very obvious running tracks in very obvious shapes in very weird parts of the world, like in the middle of the desert or in a mountain range, somewhere where you wouldn't expect it to be. And it wasn't just the U.S. government that lost bases because of this. It was French government, Italian government, Russian government. This company just had all that data. It just had it. And there's no reason to believe it didn't sell that data before it released it publicly. Basically a bidding war between state actors. There's no reason to believe they didn't do that because it was their data and they owned it. And maybe not. Maybe someone there didn't realize that this was information they had, but it seems really unlikely because, well, maybe I'm not giving this person who discovered it enough credit. It seems to me like this is a very easy thing to spot. But maybe they didn't analyze their data enough. But either way, they had this data. The U.S. government didn't know they had it, presumably. The Russian government didn't know they had it. And it was stuff that could have been used against each other. And all of that is just because, people aren't concerned with their privacy. They aren't concerned with what they're sharing, and they don't know. So here it says turning off data sharing is an option, but it's not default. That's a problem. It's a problem because privacy is a consent issue. Sharing information about yourself is a consent issue. And these companies don't take anything like consent seriously, of course, as we've seen in the past couple stories. So you may own a machine, like a Fitbit, that can be used to incriminate you, even if you've done nothing incriminating. This is a really good example of that, but I don't have an article example of this. But a good point is tracking crimes takes time. So if you buy a device, I've mentioned before that all of the Lenovo ThinkPads I have, I bought them used. Well, I connect them to the internet. And what if one of them was used for something disgusting or something illegal, and now I have the device, and maybe the MAC address is being tracked, but I should have brought up this story, but I didn't think about it till just now. There's information, like there's open cases, like cold cases, where governments are asking people to turn in any information they have about certain MAC addresses because all they have is a MAC address and it hasn't been connected to the internet in the past 8 years, but it was used in a really terrible crime. So they say, if you have logs of internet traffic, you should check it. If you find that MAC address, let us know. We want any information we can have on that MAC address. So what if this was that machine? Well, all of a sudden, the government's knocking at my door. I'm in a way more precarious situation than I would have been. I mean, all I'm doing is making videos about why you should care about privacy, or if you don't care about your own privacy, no one else will. And that's it. There's no reason for me to go through something like that. And I can, of course, prevent that by, again, thinking about what I'm sharing, educating myself on how this stuff gets shared and how it gets tracked, and then taking steps to prevent that. So anyway, final point. Wow, I made this a lot shorter than the last time I recorded. This is the most important point. And so I need you to hear it. Even if none of these are concerns of yours at all, you should still care about privacy, because they may become concerns to you or someone you love in a future you can't predict. So I use Rob Braxman as the example. Brax is he's a cybersecurity guy on YouTube. His videos are way better than mine. You should check him out. But he has said, people have asked him, why do you care so much about privacy? Because he's always going on about how he has nothing to hide. He's totally out of doing cybersecurity as a job. He's just some guy who lives in California and he just wants to, retire and live on his boat. Nothing to hide. But he still obviously cares a lot about privacy. And when they asked him, he says, well, I grew up in a place where I was living my life normally. I was putting information out on the internet, doing things, not thinking about being surveilled. And then one day my government was overthrown and there was a dictatorship in place that was all about mass surveillance, all about thought crime, all about if you didn't believe in the system, or if you voted against the system, you were likely to be killed. And so he said, well, obviously, as soon as that happened, I realized I couldn't predict the future. And I started always living like I wanted to keep my life, my information, stuff about me, safe from third parties, safe from governments, etc. And again, I didn't want to make this about, government level legal stuff, but that is a good point. it's a good point. You can't predict the future. And so even if any of these things might become concerns to you in the future, you should act like they're concerns now, because you can't predict the future. And you can't just keep on pumping information out there and then hope and pray whenever it becomes an issue that you can take it all back, because you can't. Anyway, I'm going to end with Zeynep Tufekci, who is a professor in the U.S., who does, it says here she's a techno-sociologist. I don't know what that means, but she did a TED Talk, and this is the takeaway line, which I like quite a bit. We're building a dystopia just to make people click on ads. Now, again, like I said, if you don't care, no one cares. But if you don't see this coming, or if you think I'm being hyperbolic, I think you're naive. And I'm sorry to say that, but I just think it's the case. I mean, all we see is things moving in the direction of more data collection. And all we see is evidence that people are not consenting to that, and that they aren't aware that data is even being collected on them. And so the only way to fight back, the only way to defend yourself, is to control what information you release, and to control what information third parties, websites, potential governments, though it doesn't have to be, what they see. So I'm going to run through these again really quickly. Again, last video was 45 minutes, so I'm glad this one ended a lot faster. These aren't all the good reasons, but again, these are good reasons that have nothing to do with being a criminal, have nothing to do with being a bad person. You can, let me start over. You should care about privacy because you can empower yourself to help others in a way that a bloated government can't. You can remove the potential to be targeted based on your interests. You can keep information about you and those you love private from non-government third parties and even government third parties, but mainly I wanted to focus on non-government. You may own a machine that can be used to incriminate you even if you've done nothing incriminating. Finally, even if none of these are concerns of yours, you should still care about privacy because these may become concerns of yours or a concern of someone you love in a future you can't predict. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Take care of yourselves, please, everyone. You don't know me, but I care about you, and I want you to be safe online. And that's it. Thanks for listening.